Hey, everybody, welcome back to Get in the Game podcast. I'm here with another guest. This week we have Skip Schumaker, second baseman extraordinaire. Skip played for the Cardinals, Reds, Dodgers, Padres we're going to call it 10 years, Skip. I know there was a lot of ups and downs in there, but man, you fought through and you battled. True underdog. So it's good to have you here.
Yeah, I like the sound of 10 years because it was close to 10 years, so I'll take the 10 years. So, yeah, thanks for having me on.
Skip, you and I got to end my career. You were still in the middle of it. I remember playing against you before we actually got to play together with the Cardinals. But looking back over your major league career, which spanned all those years and a couple of World Series championships with the Cardinals, what do you consider maybe a defining moment in your career?
Wow. I have a couple, a life one and a professional one. So the life one, I was in AAA. We just traded for a guy named Adam Wainwright,
Sure.
and you heard of him? Yeah, he's a pretty good
Yeah.
guy. Didn't really know him at the time. Faced him a bunch in the minor leagues. But once we traded for him, I kind of fell in love with him as a person. I was like, there's something different about this guy. Just like I was just watching everything he did, and everything he did had a purpose and there's intent behind it. And it wasn't just the baseball side; it was relationship side. So I'm like, there's something different. I want to be a part of this guy. He invited me to a Bible study. Um, Adam Wainwright gave me my first Bible. So that was a big life changing moment. Obviously, I mean, I was starting my walk, earlier, a couple years before that at Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara, where I went to school, but was very early in my journey. Didn't really attend Bible study every day or every Sunday morning. Just kind of did it if I had time. Well, Adam kind of pulled me in, and it's the only Bible I have still. And he autographed in it. Everything you need to know is in this book, Adam Wainwright. And this is the one I read. So that's the start of the life changing moment, I guess. And my wife also. We were both very early on in our journey, in our walk, and so Adam completely transformed our life in the way we, parent and do life. I guess he's number one on the list. So professionally, I will say that the life or the changing moment happened actually in college. So I didn't play very well my freshman year. Transferred from LMU to Santa Barbara, and I created this kind of edge to my game, and where I had to be motivated in a different type of way. And Scott, we talked a little bit about it the other day and during Bible study, but there was I couldn't just go and check boxes. I had to do something different to motivate myself in almost like a bipolar type of deal
Mm.
on the field. And it happened when a coach didn't believe in me, and I was just trying to prove people wrong. And in this game, you start proving people right or prove people wrong. And so I was motivated, still am motivated, as hopefully manage again one day, but to prove everybody wrong that says I can't. That's just what drives me. And it started after my freshman year of college. So I know went a couple different ways there, but and a lot of meat to unpack probably. But those are the two life changing moments for me.
Yeah, that's great. Skip, when we talk about some different ways that your career went, you had a pretty significant position change. You came up as an outfielder, and then you went to second base after Tony La Russa actually asked you to step into that role. That's no easy deal to do at the big league level, by the way. Stepping outside of your comfort zone, a position you're not familiar with. How did taking on that new position shape your mindset as a teammate and doing something maybe that you thought would be better for the good of the team, but maybe not necessarily good for you professionally or personally?
That off season was in 2000, heading into 2009. I get a phone call in January from Tony La Russa saying, "Hey, we think you can play second base. Are you willing to try it?" My hitting partner, so I hit with Tony La Russa, I hit with Mark McGuire every offseason. That offseason, Matt Holliday joined us in Newport Beach, and Adam Kennedy. Adam Kennedy was our second baseman. So I get the phone call while I'm in the cages with Adam Kennedy. Well, that's his job. So I'm like, oh no.
Wow.
Yeah, this is how am I going to do this? Adam Kennedy was awesome to me as, kind of a younger player, rookie. And so I'm like, Tony, I'll do whatever you need me to do. Because at the time we had Rick Ankiel, Ryan Ludwig, we had some Chris Duncan, we had some guys that could hit.
Yeah.
Kobe Rasmus was coming up. So I said, I'm willing to try whatever you need. It's my arbitration year. I'm like, oh man, this could go one way or the other, but here we go. So I tell Adam, I was like, hey, listen, I don't know what kind of conversation you're about to have, but this is the one I just had. I just wanted to be honest with him. The first guy that took me out to show me how to turn double plays was Adam Kennedy. So it just shows you what kind of guy he was. Like he was all in, like, hey, this is, he was on the tail end of his career. He saw me trying to, stay in the big leagues. Just what kind of friend he was to me and what kind of teammate he was to me. That I'll never forget what he did for me. So that was an unbelievable moment. So started doing it. Is nobody likes to be embarrassed on a major league field. And I got to spring training with only a couple weeks of off season to transition into second base. Never got a ground ball at second base my whole life. And now I'm supposed to turn a double play with Chris Carpenter on the mound in a first and third situation and expected to be turned every single time. So I'm in full panic mode. I'm pretty convinced in spring training I made an error or two every single day. Tony called me in his office, said, hey, listen, you doing okay? And he said, and I said, yeah, and just concerned about, what my teammates think of me if they want a ground ball hit to me or not. That shouldn't be on their mind. Like, please don't hit it to Skip. And he's like, we're going to give you a long leash. I believe you can do it. And so do they. Chris Carpenter said it to me. Adam Wainwright said it to me. And that was a huge moment for me in spring training when I heard my teammates say, hey, dude, you can do it. We don't think you're going to mess this thing up at all for us. And so that once that happened, Albert Pujols would take ground balls with me every single morning at 7:30 in the morning. Remember, he's on his 9th year of hitting 300 with 30 home runs and 100 RBIs with multiple Gold Gloves and an MVP or two already. And Albert is out there taking ground balls with me, and Okendo and a guy named Joe Patini, who was our bench coach. And it was rapid fire, but he was showing me different ways. Albert was doing that. Like, he didn't need to do that. He was also taking a lot more backhands and being in the 4-hole to get the balls. So making sure I don't get them early on in my transition, which he should have. So it was just a really cool moment, just seeing how my teammates went about it and supported me and embraced me. And Tony was also really good of not encouraging me, but like I was not going to lose a game for them because he got me out of there in like the 7th inning, made sure like if we got a lead, you go to the outfield, don't mess this thing up. I knew it and I was okay with it. But it's about winning. And he felt like this was the best way to win. It was the best way for me to help the team win. And it was nothing about the arbitration. How much money would this be better for? Like that was that was not the culture we had. All we had was, what's the most important part of today? And today it's winning is first. And if he thought it was winning, I would help us win. I was all in. And it was a credit to Tony and the leadership we had in that clubhouse that helped me in this transition.
Yeah, Skip, when you were talking there, I was thinking about my time with the Padres and a guy that you're working with and for now, Bruce Bochy. Bochy displayed some of that same kind of leadership skills and, really gave me a chance. And I've just felt that he was putting me in a place for success, where he knew that I could, slide in and really perform in this role. And just like what you said, when you know that other leaders have your best interest at heart, it makes you want to run through a wall for them. And that's exactly how I felt about Bochy. I'm sure you felt the same way about LaRussa. When you think about some of these leaders that you've been around, from the players, like you mentioned, Yachty and Albert, and then guys that you played for, like LaRussa, guys that you learned from, like Bochy, and you transition from on the field to in the dugout. What are some of the adjustments that they helped you make, and some of their leadership styles that they helped you to build, especially in the way of communication?
Well, quick story on Bochy. So I was the manager for the Marlins the last couple of years, and this is my first year in Texas. Um, I've known Boch because we go on this Jackson Hole vacation that Glenn Doche flies us all out. I mean, an amazing person, amazing trip in Jackson Hole. So I've known Boch a little bit the last couple of years. Um, I get the special assistant job in Texas. Chris Young offers me a job. Incredibly grateful. So excited to learn from Bruce Bochy, Michael Young, Ian Kinsler, some really good dudes over there. Bruce Bochy calls me and says, "Skip, so excited, can't wait to learn from you."
What?
Me? Yeah, but
Wow.
that shows you what leadership is, right? Like, he's not going to learn anything from me, like zero, right? But it was just like this icebreaker, just like this sense of relief because you don't know what like a former manager coming in and then sitting in meetings, looking at another manager and just like that dynamic can get tricky in our game. Bruce Bochy is, he's the maybe the most secure person in the world, right? And for him to say that to me just shows you that why every single player says, including you, my favorite manager, because of that, what kind of man he is. So that went a long way. So I just had to throw that in there. But I think it goes down to relationships, Scott. Like there is this game is all about relationships, and guys want to know where they stand. Tony told me where I stood. Like whether I wanted to hear or not, good or bad, at least I knew where I stood. And these players want you have to have tough conversations with them, but at least they know where they're at in their career, how to get better, if they want to start, if they want to whatever, if they want to be high leverage situation, bullpens, whatever that means to them, they want to know where they stand. And so like the preparation stood out the most. Hiring, being a really really good at hiring. So like Tony's staff was really really good. And I always thought about like if I get this chance, I have to have really good guys around me that are honest with players that cover my blind spot. And like I need to know that the message I want delivered to them is being delivered the way I want it delivered to the player and not a way that they want it delivered to make them look good. And once you have that, man, this thing rolls. And I think that a lot of players still want to be coached. Tony La Russa was not afraid to coach Albert Pujols and Chris Carpenter and whatever. And I think the greats still want to be taught. And I think that would always stuck out to me.
Skip, I'm gonna put you on the spot here for a sec. Do you have a specific example of how you had a message that you wanted to get out in a way that you wanted it to be communicated, and maybe it came out a different way that you had to change, or you just had to fight against making sure that it came out the way you wanted to? Can you think of an example of that?
Um, you learn along the way, how different, like your delivery, what you think how you're delivering it might be different than what the player is hearing. So
Mm.
like how I deliver it to, whether it was, Fernando Tatis or Jazz or Sandy or, these like superstars in the game, how I think I'm delivering it in a good way, they might be taking it the wrong way. So I had to make sure like, for instance, we acquired Luis Arias, phenomenal bat to ball skill, gets on base at a 380 clip, batting titles. Um, Jazz was the leadoff hitter when I got to Miami. And he is a superstar, right? Everybody wants to watch Jazz play. He's a freak athlete. But the way that I felt the best as far as lineup construction to protect him, against lefties or whatever it was to separate Arias and Jazz and have a couple big boys in the middle, like Soler or whoever it was. Jazz didn't think he was a cleanup hitter, and like I needed to get the four hole cleanup hitter stigma or whatever that's wrapped around the four hole out of his mind. It's just like, no, you're a really good hitter. Arias is really good at the top, batting champion. I think this is the best way that we can go about it, and it protects you against certain left-handed leverage guys or whatever it was. Even though I think Jazz can hit lefties at the time, this was the best way to construct it. There was some pushback, with Jazz, which I want. I want guys to tell me how they feel, and so I'm not, trying to guess on how they, are thinking, what they're thinking. And it was a really healthy conversation. Initially, it was like, Jazz, you're hitting fourth. And it wasn't like a really good I could have had a better conversation with him to break down exactly why I wanted to, or what my thought was behind it. So that was kind of a learning lesson for me, but credit to Jazz. He bought in, ended up getting to the playoffs, with Jazz, being in that, four hole, in four hole and driving in some really good runs. He's hitting fifth, I think, now for the New York Yankees. So yeah, I think he's bought in. And it's a credit to Jazz, but it was just a reminder that, how I think I'm delivering it might not always be the way that they're hearing it.
Yeah, and to your point, you have no opportunity to deliver that message unless you have that relationship and that trust built up. I was thinking when you were talking about that, boy, there's a parallel for parents in talking to kids because I mean, I have two girls, you have girls. As we talk to our girls, especially, sometimes our tone or even just, posture, body language has so much to do with how we are communicating something. And, sometimes I think I'm communicating something very differently than what they're hearing it. I don't know if you have that experience.
Every day. Just so, yes, I have a 17-year-old boy and a 15-year-old daughter.
Mm.
And it absolutely is all about the delivery and how a teenager hears it. What I have really learned, and someone, I think actually, I'm not sure if it's Brian Hummel or not, but someone told me that, when you're parenting, the most important thing is being caught, not taught. So when
Mm.
you're like, so if you're doing something, like they are seeing you do something, that is, they're digesting that way more than you just like telling them stuff. And so like if I'm reading or if I'm, helping or whatever I'm doing, they are digesting that, remembering that way more than me just like trying to drive a nail into something, with them. So that's helped me as far as like how I'm parenting and delivering. And sometimes it's like them catching me doing something really good, what I think is really good, and not just like telling them to do something.
Yeah, and a great lesson for me, or a great barometer, is just because people say so many times, the most important thing about somebody is how you made them feel, and so being able to read the room, being able to see how somebody is reacting to things that you're saying, can tell you a lot maybe about like, do I need to adjust my approach here because I'm not getting received the way that I hope I would, or I'm not building this relationship the way that maybe I should be. So yeah, great lessons there. Um, I-
Coaching.
yeah, I want to keep going with this idea of servant leadership, Skip, because you've talked a lot about just humility and leadership. We know that Jesus was the true servant leader, and so as we incorporate more of this faith conversation into what we're talking about here, you as a leader, as a servant leader, your first time managing, you received the Manager of the Year award. So obviously there was something working down there in Miami. And you mentioned when you took that job that it was never about yourself; it was about doing what the team needed that day. So, what did you learn from your faith and from watching how Jesus led, and how did you incorporate some of those same principles into the dugout?
Well, I think there's some lessons to be learned on, there's some really good that come from failure, and some really good lessons that you can read throughout the Bible and Scripture, that it wasn't all just smelly, really good things happening all the time, throughout Scripture. That there's some failures, and how you come out of the failures really define who you are, and what your team is ultimately all about. When I got to Miami, there's some really good players. Donnie Mattingly is a great guy. I had a really good relationship. I played for Don Mattingly in 2013. And he was there for 7 years. A Christian man, phenomenal person. And I took over for him. Another guy that called me, and talked to me about, what was going on in Miami, and again, he didn't have to do that. Another, really good example of what leadership looks like. Um, it goes back to Adam Wainwright. Like, the guys that when I was in AAA, I wanted to be more like him in good and bad times. And I always felt like, man, if I ever led and I got a chance to lead a group of men in a Major League Baseball team, they're going to look at me in the good times and bad. And how I react is a big deal. And not to get too high or too low, but like, what would what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
what would Adam Wainwright do? I always thought about that. And as crazy as it is, 10 years, 15 years later, watching Wainwright go about it in AAA, I was doing this. I was trying to think about what would he do in certain situations. Um, so I think they're always looking at you to see how you react, looking at you to see what kind of demeanor you have coming in after a loss, a tough loss, late inning loss, that type of stuff. Like, how are you and your staff going to react the next day? And if I come in and in a bad with a bad attitude and still carrying over for the next day, or I wasn't honest or wasn't upfront, like that would go a long way. Change this thing again. Okay. And so I never that never got away from me. Even last year when I wasn't manager of the year. We won 62 games in a 100 loss season. How you react and how you treat other people is ultimately like what they remember. The most. And I think, man, there's a number of examples, whether it's during a Bible study every Sunday morning. I have my own Bible study every Thursday night with a group of men back home that I would Zoom in with in California, even on the time change in Miami, that just held me accountable. And if I was, making it too much about me, and the record is my record, it's my record that, in Miami, it's like, no, it's not. Like, that doesn't matter. I know ultimately the major leagues is about winning, but as soon as I started making it about me, man, I had people around me, like, punching me in the face a little bit, like, relax. Like, it's more than just, the wins and losses here. You have a group of men that start to impact right now. They're going to remember this for the rest of their life. So I think it just kind of came full circle when I was thinking about, the good and the bad times and how Adam Wainwright reacted.
Yeah, and you think about the crucible of a major league season. I would say it's very similar to what we go through in the house. I mean, whether it's a baseball team or a family unit, you're going to see what's really behind that person when you see them every day, when you see them through the highs and the lows. So many times I feel like I leave the best of myself outside of my home. And when I come home is when I'm tired, I don't have the energy for this conversation. And my family, the people that are closest to me, get the worst of me. And so, that's something that I constantly have to remind myself, like, I know I don't want to do this right now. I don't want to have this conversation or explain this to my teenager. I don't want to go outside and bump the volleyball. I'd rather just sit on the couch and veg out on a show right now. But that's what true leadership is, right? Is in the bad times and the good, like showing up the same every single day.
Yeah, you have to. And to your point, I had to live 30 minutes away from the stadium. And so when I drive home,
Me
you know,
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So when I got home, I was a husband and a father, and and you still think about it a little bit. You don't, wash it completely,
Mm.
but so you don't veg out on a show, or you're ready to put a ball in a tee or kick the soccer ball or whatever your wife needs. Like, I was trying to be available for, but I needed that 30-minute drive. I could not live right next to the ballpark. I still can't do it as a manager or a coach. Like, I needed the release a little bit, the relief, and then get back to, like, okay, that was the job. Now it's time to be the dad and husband.
Yeah, that's funny. You're the only guy that I've heard say that, but I totally needed that buffer too, just to kind of unwind and leave the field at the field before you get home, and then your dad.
Right.
Um, Skip, talk to me about like the transitions. I mean, you've already mentioned some things like changing positions, reinventing yourself. I know you were a guy that got called up and sent down quite a bit. What do you, when you go through those transitions, what does that teach you about yourself, and what would you offer as advice to our listeners in terms of anytime you go through a transition, face a major life change? How do you handle that, and how do you really lean into your purpose during that time?
Well, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I retired in 2016. It's not like I made this $100 million, where I could just sit on the lake and watch my kids grow up. That just wasn't my career. So I needed to figure out exactly what I wanted to do and still have a purpose. And one of our favorite books here is The Purpose Driven Life, Rick Warren. That's we go to Saddleback Church. And so I'm like, all right, what is my purpose going to be if I'm, outside of playing the game? It ended up AJ Preller and Andy Green gave me an opportunity and be a special assistant and said, hey, listen, if see if you want to scout or coach or whatever you want to do. My wife said, I'm not your hobby, so figure something out. And so because she knows my personality, I can't just sit. I got to do something. And so I jumped in and fell in love with the coaching side, and it really I could give back in a different way. I also could show that it was more about baseball. Matt Holliday and Adam Wainwright again. We did hospital visits throughout our career. I never would have done that if I wasn't in baseball and could really show what an impact and what your platform could really do. So it allowed me to show these players in the minor leagues and then early on in the big leagues, like, listen, when you are having a tough day, um, go to a hospital and impact some kids and like put some things in perspective. And I think that really helped me, later in my career when I was going through some anxiety. Didn't want the ball hit to me in 2009. I would go and do these hospital visits, and what happened was is like these kids. I was thinking that I was making an impact on them when I got there. They were making more of an impact on me, and like putting things in perspective and like, gosh, a ground ball, if I miss a ground ball, it ain't end of the world. Because they're fighting a way bigger fight than me in a major league stadium against the Pittsburgh Pirates, right? Like it's a much different scenario here. So that really was life changing for me. So I got to show these kids on now the other side when I'm a coach, and we still do it. I still do hospital visits as a coach. I still did hospital visit as a manager, and I brought these kids with me, these players with me, to these hospital visits, and now they are doing it, with players and bringing them in Miami and St. Louis and San Diego. So they still do it, which has been an amazing thing for me to see. But the purpose is, how are you using your platform? And I got to do it a little bit later in my career and then transitioned into like coaching and teaching the game, which I absolutely love teaching the game. It's been when you're a bad player, you have to like really know the details to survive, right? I couldn't just out talent the league. So I needed to make sure that I knew everything, tried to know everything at least, to survive at the major league level. And so now I get to give back and to teach the game in a different way, but also off the field, man, it's been so rewarding to see like, the guys that are doing stuff off the field and really making an impact on their community.
Yeah, Skip, that's got to make you just, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you think about like what is this all about? I mean, it's so easy to get wrapped up in our own career, our own numbers. I mean, baseball's such a head down game. But man, when you see something like that, you see something click for a player, or you see a child's face in a hospital light up. I mean, that's got to be a reminder to you, like this is why we're doing this, right?
100%. And I didn't realize, again, when in 2016, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I became transition into the coaching world, and I could still do what I love to do, which was still do those hospital visits and make impacts, in a different way with, bringing these players. And then it's still rewarding for me. And those those kids that are, at the hospital when we do our, like, it's called NIGU, it's Never Ever Give Up camp, and seeing these kids, light up still. And I'm a coach, I'm like far removed from the game. But to see them light up with the players I bring alongside of me, it's just, it's been so great. And I'm grateful for the second half of my baseball career because of it.
Well, Skip, I'm grateful for the fact that you continue to pour into these young players. You're a family man, you're a man of faith. Thank you for being a man that gets in the game, and I really appreciate the time for you coming on this podcast.
Yeah, and I last thing I'm going to say
Yeah.
is I am so grateful for these Bible studies that I have with men like you that I get to learn from still. Like, you don't stop learning. And it's so awesome to have guys like you and Matt Carpenter and Wainwright still in that Bible study. I'm in a Bible study back home, and just surrounding yourself with people that you can still learn and grow with, is what it's all about, because you're just not finished. I'm still every Bible study I still learn about life and how to husband and parent and coach and bounce things off of. And I just don't surround myself with like yes men, and there's just guys that like you that I'm so grateful for, because they hit me with truths, and that's what I really want. And so thank you for having me on the podcast. But I just want you, like, people to know that you have to have this group of men around you, or women around you, that can keep helping you grow. And I'm grateful for guys like you.
Well, Skip, you've taught me a few things just in today's podcast. I love Nigu, never ever give up. I'm going to use that one again. And you're not finished. God is always continuing to work in you. It reminds me of my favorite, one of my life verses, Philippians 1:6, that he who began a good work in you will see it to completion on the day of our Lord Jesus. So I love the way he keeps using you. And I would encourage everybody on this podcast to get out there, get in the game, and realize how God wants to use you as well.
Love it. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportsspectrum.com.